On Canberra Live with Markus Paul. Legal advice from Blumer's lawyers.
Noor Blumer joins me here in the studio. G'day, Noor. How are you?
G'day.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
Now, what's going on with this whole David Eastman inquiry? Now, the talk is that he will consider defamation action over the coming weeks over so-called public attacks. Now, late on Friday, as we know, the inquiry released its findings, recommending that Eastman's murder conviction be quashed. So what's happening next, do you think?
Well, they've got a few options. It's gone back to the full bench of the Supreme Court because it's up to them to decide what happens next.
And they've named those three, I understand, today. So the three judges that will be looking after that.
Oh, no, I haven't heard that. But yes, it will be a full bench, but they've got a few judges to pick from at the moment, so that's good. But all the court can do is quash it, or quash it and order a retrial, or confirm the conviction.
I can't see them ordering another retrial, can you?
Well, the commissioner or the judge who did the inquiry, Justice Martin, says he doesn't think that'll be possible because of the lack of evidence. Having said that, I watched a murder trial recently in Edinburgh. Yep. Which was from a murder in 1986, so it's a lot older than that. But having said that, there might be different circumstances as well. So every case is different.
This one's very high profile. Now, will he receive, do you think, ultimately, and this is probably more of an opinion than maybe legally based, but compensation, do you think that will be something forthcoming? And who would pay that?
Compensation would have to come probably from the government because it's probably the behaviour of the police and the prosecutors that has mostly been mentioned in how this has happened. It is possible to sue the police. It is possible in certain circumstances, but it's quite a difficult thing to do. There's a thing called malicious prosecution. So if you think you've been maliciously prosecuted, but they have to prove malice. Yeah. There's a few things in here that you could point the finger at, like the fact that the judges said that they put a lot of pressure on him, hoping that he would confess to something. And whether or not that's accepted or not, I don't know. The other thing is he's spent a lot of time in jail, and just because His Honour said that he thinks he probably is maybe have committed the act doesn't mean it's right.
I found that interesting, actually. Yeah. I really did. He basically said along the lines, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty much convinced that you are guilty of
But he still has I think he's described it as a nagging doubt. And of course, you've got to remember, listeners, that what happens is if you're going to be charged with murder, they've got to prove beyond reasonable doubt. There should be no doubt. Otherwise, you don't spend all that time in jail. Well, and he's already spent 19 years. Now, if the government was to pardon him, for instance, and a pardon is
pretty
like...
much ruling that out.
Well, they are, but look at it. It's an act of clemency. It forgives the wrongdoer. So it doesn't say that what they did was... What happened was right. It's a forgiveness sort of thing. So from that point of view, it's quite good. It's the royal prerogative of mercy.
Okay, so saying that, and I know Simon Corbell has come out and said that that's not going to be the case. But just say, for instance, the government does decide to give
a pardon,
David Eastman a pardon. Would that mean then that because that's sort of done, I guess, without any acknowledgement of the fact that? As you say, it's like a pardon.
Mercy.
Yeah, mercy.
It's
so
mercy.
Would that then mean
forgiveness? It's restoration.
So would that then have to include, if you're talking restoration, would that then include a monetary penalty?
I think that would be a decent thing to do if it was affordable and if it was acceptable, but it wouldn't necessarily be necessary for them to do that. The problem is if they don't give him something, then he will probably take some sort of action, and that's going to be more expensive and time consuming and possibly drag on and on again.
I'm going to be honest, I can see it. I can almost smell a settlement.
Well, they've called it $3 million just for this latest inquiry, and I think that'd be certainly on the conservative side. The other thing they can do is quash it. So it's like he was never convicted. and just leave it and not order a retrial. And in a sense, that's a fairly fair thing to do as well. In other places, though, there are things called suitors' funds. So let's say you think you've been treated badly by the courts, for instance, or by the police. You can, and you've been found ultimately not guilty, and there's something in the behaviour of your prosecution that's really been a little out of line, then you can get you can apply to the suitors fund for your legal costs.
Okay.
And but we don't have a suitors fund in the ACT, so we'll see what happens next. But I think
watch this space, as they say. All right. Well, we'll move on in just a tick. We'll just take a break.
On Canberra Live with Markus Paul, legal advice from Blumer's lawyers.
And Noor Blumer joining me in the studio this afternoon for our legal chat this week. Now, a Canberra court has fined two companies $5,000 over the death of a worker in January. It doesn't sound a lot, $5,000 though, Noor.
Oh, it doesn't. And you've got to remember that this accident was in 2009, and then we didn't have the benefit of the industrial manslaughter laws we've got now. We've got much tougher laws. We've got much bigger fines. And so some of the ones that are coming through will be able to come under the new laws.
Didn't Simon Corbell announce just a couple of months ago, we've got a new industrial court stroke magistrate now, haven't we?
We do, and the Chief Magistrate, Lorraine Walker, is doubling up as the industrial magistrate. So we didn't actually get a new magistrate as such, but we got a new name.
Oh, okay.
But she certainly will be specialising in industrial things like this,
right.
And also workers' compensation style claims. Unfortunately, sometimes there's a bit of a crossover in those claims, so she might need to send some of the work somewhere else if she can't do it all herself. So we'll see how that goes. But that's an interesting finding. What was interesting about this case, and it was an awful case.
Absolutely.
The person was fairly new to the job and hadn't been trained properly, and was dealing with a very dangerous, those cranes on the back of a truck that pick up like hoppers and bins. They're quite lethal weapons. Anyway, so that's how that happened, and he lost his life in a most distressing way. Both, the good news is that now the coronial inquest started, but both and I think went to a certain stage, may have even finished the evidence. Both companies involved that employed him, they have labour service companies, so that was one, and the other one was the actual business itself, and they both pleaded guilty.
Yep.
So that was good, and but it's obviously not very good for the families. They think that's a very small fine for what it is. Having said that, and I can't say too much, but there are always legal proceedings open to people who have suffered a loss or an injury, and that's not done through the coronial court or the criminal court.
So, for instance, there could be some civil matters that still need to be attended to.
That can be attended to, and you may never hear about those. So you see those, and that's the same in all
private,
of these cases.
really, I guess, aren't they?
Oh well, it depends. Some of them are, they're called civil matters, and some of them have got confidential terms, and. But I don't want people to think the 5,000 is it. There are civil remedies available.
Sure.
And as we talked about in Mr. Eastman's case.
Ah, yes. All right, now another break, and then when we come back, I just want to have a little chat to you about the funding that's been put into justice.
On Canberra Live with Markus Paul, legal advice from Blumer's lawyers.
With Noor Blumer this afternoon. Now, Noor, let's talk about yesterday's ACT budget. Now, it included a number of preemptive measures to reduce crime rates here in the Territory, and also funding to reduce the backlog in our courts.
I know. It's always good when there's some money thrown at legal matters, because people get justice more quickly and better justice, I think, if it's done well. Certainly, cutting crime rates is a little tricky. It can be like you can put more police on the street, which will maybe prevent crime because they're more visible. But it might mean that they might. That's right. They might
people through the courts.
They might catch more people doing naughty things. So, but I don't know that that's what's in mind at the moment. But they are concerned about the crowding at the relatively new prisons, so they've had to allocate some resources to that.
Oh, yeah.
And they're also doing a review of sentencing so that they can look at alternatives to prison sentences, so that's all good. But the other way is, I think one of the most effective way of decreasing crime is by increasing employment. The more people that are employed, the less time they have out on the streets. But I think we all know that. So as for the backlog, well, actually,
the Supreme Court, because as we know, the ACT government put a heap of money funding-wise for the Supreme Court because it was clogged up.
Yeah, that's right.
Blitz,
it really, and that's been going on for the last couple of years, and now we're having some mini blitzes and getting bits of extra judges here and there, and we've got
Is it working?
Oh yes, it's actually getting to the point now where I was looking at the figures today, and it's nothing like it was 2 years ago. It's terrific. We do have a couple of outstanding judgments from 2012, but the rest are from last year, and it seems to be that the judges we've got sitting are keeping up with their work more or less within there's not that much that's long outstanding. But quite frankly, there's still too much, because in most courts, 3 months is sort of the max for handing down judgments. So it'd be nice to see nothing in that list of matters, but that's more than 3 months.
Yeah. Now, with the introduction of the new mental health facility down at Simonston, we will be speaking to someone about that this afternoon. A couple of the residents down there in Canberra South are a little disappointed by what they've been calling a lack of consultation. But these are certainly facilities that will help in the long term in keeping people out of our jails as well, particularly those who are affected by mental health issues.
Look, the judges and the magistrates have been calling out for years for some decent place to send people with mental illness. The fact is, our jails in New South Wales and everywhere else jails are clogged with people with mental illness, and it's not the right place. It's not right to handle them in that sort of environment. They actually need some safer care than that, because actually what they need is help a lot of the time. So and often they're there for relatively minor matters, but it's the way they've behaved because they're not well that has made it worse. So I think that's excellent. I think it's always hard for the people in the vicinity. I remember when I lived up that way once, and they were talking about putting a prison nearby, and nobody wanted it in their neighbourhood. And I think that's the case. So
that's usually the case everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah.
Noor, it's been wonderful catching up with you again.
Nice talking
this
to you
afternoon.
too, Markus.
We'll see you again in a couple of weeks.
See you later.
All the best. Noor Blumer there from Blumer's Lawyers here on Canberra.